All right, it is a Thursday. It had some snow out there last night, but not a lot of accumulation. Not too bad, nonetheless. And thanks for tuning in and listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone line between 11 and 12 today, and I'm curious what many of you will have to say today. I'm sure that some of you will continue to be talking about what's happening with the federal election and the federal election scene. Liberal leader Mark Carney back in Ottawa today to deal with the fallout of a new auto tariffs announced by U.S. President Donald Trump. And, of course, this could change between now and the 2nd of April. With Donald Trump, you just never know what's going to happen, right? This is one of the challenges, but this is part of his modus operandi, I suppose. He's unpredictable. And I don't even know if it's strategically so. I just think that that's just the nature of who he is. I think he wakes up at any given time and anything can come out of his mouth. You just never know. Anyway, it's unclear when Carney will be back on the road to continue campaigning. Is Carney the right person to stand up to Trump? That is, to me, one of the ballot, if not the ballot box question. Who is best positioned to stand up to Donald Trump and defend Canada in a time of an existential crisis? Is it Pierre Poilievre or Mark Carney? To me, that is an underlying that is the underlying key ballot box question for me. Anyway, what is it for you? So that's something that we can talk about. A new poll suggests that Canadians are feeling less anxious about losing their jobs as U.S. President Donald Trump continues to pursue his trade war with Canada and much of the world. I'm surprised by that. I don't know why people would feel less concerned. I don't know what's changed. As a matter of fact, I think things have gotten worse. But I'm curious what you think about this. How do you feel about your economic future and your job? And might you have already been impacted by this? Perhaps you have a business that's been impacted by this trade war or whatever it might be. Want to hear from you. Are you impacted? Will you be impacted? And lots of other things to get to as well, including Danielle Smith, Alberta Premier Danielle Smith, defending her plan to fly to Florida to appear at an event alongside a far-right U.S. influencer who calls Canada a silly country, saying it is her duty to do everything she can to reach out to Americans to prevent tariffs. So her methodology or mindset is you might as well enter dialogue with people as opposed to not, and you'll potentially get more done in that way if you do that. So we shall see. And, of course, when Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre accused Mark Carney this week of being beholden to China, it was his latest in a series of barbs he's thrown at the Liberal leader's past corporate stints and personal financial holdings. Are you concerned Carney has tax shelters, assets in Bermuda? Not the first Prime Minister to do so, by the way. Paul Martin did so. Will this sway people away from Carney? Because the consensus is, at least from the people that I've been talking to, that people generally aren't all that concerned about Mark Carney and the fact that he's got holdings and tax havens and sheltering money and all that goes with it. So we'll find out what you have to say about it all. Again, we'll open the phone lines in about an hour's time. Hope to hear from many of you. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Ness as well on the other side of the glass of the control boards. Doing a fine job as always. All right, let's dive right in. Let's talk to Claudia Chender. Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP. Claudia, thanks for joining the show as always.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, so the legislature, the winter sitting, I suppose we're calling it, wrapped up. And what are some of the highlights or lowlights or some of the points that you'd like to parse out of this?
Oh, well, in order, I would say highlight was definitely the degree to which Nova Scotians were engaged with the work that's been happening over the past several weeks. We saw, I guess, in the category of low light, an agenda from the government that was a complete surprise. It wasn't anything that they talked about on the campaign trail. Rather than housing and healthcare and the cost of living, the things that Nova Scotians care about, they came in trying to give themselves the power to fire the Auditor General and lift resource bans with no consultation and constrain the academic freedom of universities. And Nova Scotians fought back. And we saw them organizing in protest and writing emails and calling their MLAs, and they did force a number of changes. So it was a contentious session, but I think it was one in which the government was reminded that they are there to serve the will of Nova Scotians, and Nova Scotians certainly made their voices heard.
Okay, so the omnibus bills, what did get passed and what did get walked back, and where are we with what was included in the omnibus bill? What got walked back?
Well, they were all omnibus bills.
Mm-hmm.
And, I think it's important to say for your listeners, that's when you put a whole bunch of different stuff from different departments that might actually not have anything to do with each other into a single piece of legislation. It's a terrible way of legislating. It's like, hiding the spinach in the spaghetti. You put a bunch of stuff that needs to happen along with a bunch of stuff that's unpopular, and then you force the hand of the opposition. Bill 1 was the best example. So they walked back the provisions that would have allowed them to fire the Auditor General. They walked back the provisions that would have seen them essentially be able to determine what is and isn't available for freedom of information. But they retain the power to fire civil servants without recourse to the Nova Scotia Labour Code and without cause. That's certainly concerning. Concerning because, these are the folks that are supposed to give the government good advice. And our public service is nonpartisan by definition. And so, the advice that you can give changes if you know that you can get fired if the minister doesn't like it. Mm-hmm. And that's really what we saw. So that did go through. The lifting of the long-standing bans on uranium exploration and fracking also went through, even though, they didn't bother to talk to Nova Scotians who might be concerned about their well water, who might be concerned about their property rights. These are conversations we have to have. We have to have those conversations before they make these drastic changes that they didn't campaign on. They changed universities. They can stack the boards and determine the research priorities of Research Nova Scotia. That's an organization right now that's chaired by a number of university presidents and researchers. Those are the folks who should decide what the future of research in our province looks like, not the Minister of Education, not any Minister of Education. We saw a number of problematic pieces of legislation pass, and now it's going to be up to the public, hopefully certainly with our help, to keep an eye on this government and to make sure that they don't use some of these more draconian measures that they've passed.
All right, on the fracturing and the uranium exploration, you said they passed. When would be a timeline when those operations might commence?
Well, that's the question, Todd. I mean, the reality is we haven't heard a single company come forward and express any interest in that kind of resource development in our province. And we know that even if they did, the timeline would be decades at least. So, the artifice of this was, we have to do this to respond to tariffs. Nothing could be further from the truth. These are long. These processes take a long time, and certainly if they do intend on engaging, which as recently as last night they were quite cagey about. Now that they've passed the legislation, they're going to have to start to do that. So I don't think we're looking at anything in the immediate future, and we don't even know if there's market interest at all for either of those.
All right, and what about healthcare? Obviously, healthcare was considered, and it's still considered a crisis by many. Not a lot done on healthcare, if anything. What are your thoughts?
The only piece of legislation we saw that dealt with healthcare was that they quietly, in another one of these omnibus bills, got rid of the Emergency Department Accountability Report. And that's a report that we've relied on for years to understand what the state of emergency care is in our province. And, in HRM, we have regional hospitals, but for so many folks in Nova Scotia, they're in communities where they don't know if their emergency room is going to be open, where it's closed as often as it is open. And we can track that through this report, and that report has disappeared. So we've really seen this government move away from that signature promise to fix healthcare. There are certainly things happening in the healthcare arena, but, we've seen stories about people who have misdiagnoses for cancer, who aren't being followed, who aren't getting to those specialists. And that's something that Nova Scotians not just want, but need this government to take seriously. And so certainly, we have been and will continue to press this government to get back to the thing that people initially elected them to do.
Okay, on the university boards and stacking university boards and interfering with research and whatever it might be, is the methodology, and I suppose you can't speak for the government, but I'm assuming the methodology is that because there's a 35, something like that, % of post-secondary education funded by by taxpayers, therefore the curriculum should be based on the labor market needs moving forward, and including healthcare. And that is why perhaps government needs to intervene or should be intervening. Is that the methodology that's gone into this, or is that the ideology that's going into this?
Well, there's a couple of things, Todd. So, one part of that legislation was designed to respond to an Auditor General report that wanted some accountability around the funding that you're talking about. And, while the government tried to paint that as an issue for the universities, really it's an issue for the government. The government was giving away public funds without enough accountability tied to those. And so I think that is important. We need to know where our dollars are going. But when it comes to preparation for the labor force, that's why we have community colleges. And in fact, in this bill, community colleges have been given, more authority and more capacity to meet those labor force needs. But that's, the design of universities is not to meet the labor force needs of today. They're to meet the needs of tomorrow. And that's why we need the folks who are the experts in those fields to be designing the academic programs, to be designing the research that we go through. And it's so important. I mean, we don't only value those institutions as universities for their own sake, but they're enormous economic drivers in our province. I mean, we have 10 post-secondary institutions in our tiny province of 1 million people, and the economic activity that generates and the people who work there. And this bill has really sent a chill through that community. 35% of funding should not equal, a stacked board of governors, which is what we have now. We have the government giving themselves more than 50% of the seats at the table. Yeah. We have the Minister of Education saying that he can dictate the research priorities of Research Nova Scotia, whose board is made up of researchers and experts and university presidents. That is not going to go well, Todd. And, we're not going to attract talent. Teachers aren't going to want to come here. Researchers aren't going to want to come here. And then students aren't going to want to come here. So this is a bad bill. And we heard that from every corner of academia and research and applied research. And so certainly we will be watching, pushing the government to, to kind of move it back in future sessions. But in the meantime, to be very careful with the powers they've given themselves, because this is a sector that we can't risk.
Okay, so when it comes to the transportation bill, which was again quite sweeping and a lot of pushback from municipalities, including Nova Scotia Federation of Municipalities, they walked some of that back today, or where are we with this transportation bill?
Yeah, not really. I mean, it's hard to tell what they did with that bill, to be honest. But, this government has made a practice since they first were elected of intruding on municipal areas of jurisdiction and expertise without proper engagement. I mean, this is, municipalities at the end of the day are beholden to the province. But this is the pattern, Todd. Like, they just bulldoze through without having a conversation. Like, these guys have a majority. They're going to they're going to be able to enact their agenda, but they can do it in a way where they're bringing people along, where they're building the province up, where they're engaging, where they're building a team Nova Scotia, which is what we need now more than ever, or they can do it in a way that's divisive and where they, create chaos and leave people behind. And this bill was definitely an example. They just stomp all over municipal authority. They brought an amendment to say, we'll try to consult, basically. So, the language is nice, but it doesn't bind them to anything. And, I really think this is one of the many places where so much of that could have been avoided if they had been willing to engage with municipal leaders across this province. And you talk to those folks. I mean, These are the people who are closest to Nova Scotians. These are the people who get the first phone call a lot of the time. They deserve to be cut in on the conversation.
Okay, lastly, are you anticipating more of the same omnibus bills in the next session? Is this perhaps what we should expect?
I hope not. I mean, I really hope that Listen, I always say I wouldn't do this job if I wasn't an optimist. Hope springs eternal. I think it's a common playbook that a majority government will do all the bad things at the beginning of their second term, and give people enough time to forget about it. I don't think people will. I think Nova Scotians are upset. And I hope that will help the government choose a different tone for sessions going forward, and to remember that they were elected by Nova Scotians to do the things that Nova Scotians need. And we saw a whole session where they enacted an entire agenda of things that Nova Scotians didn't vote for and didn't ask for. And here's hoping they've learned their lesson.
Claudia, appreciate your time as always. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
All right, take care. Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP and the official opposition. When we come back, the food professor, Sylvain Charlebois, will be back. All right, joining me here in studio is Sylvain Charlebois, Senior Director, Agri-Food Analytics Lab, and he's at Dalhousie University, known as the food professor, and he brought us some spectacular, wonderful bagels today.
Oh, yeah. Dartmouth, Montreal bagels, true Montreal bagels, the best Montreal bagels you can ever eat outside of Montreal in this country. They're amazing.
And you say that they're much better than New York bagels, which are also famous.
I'm not a big fan of New York. I know you're. Do you like New York?
No.
City bagel.
No.
I actually had this debate on Twitter about 2 years ago, and Montreal bagels are much better. I think. Mm-hmm. I'm not sure what your listeners think, but I do think Montreal bagels are the best. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there you go. All right. So let's talk about Loblaw expanding body-worn camera pilot to Ontario. So it's getting pretty serious in trying to negate and figure out how to deal with theft, eh?
Yeah, I'm not sure exactly what the purpose of this policy is. Is it really to counter violence against employees? Is it to protect employees, or is it to actually surveil employees themselves?
Really?
Yeah, because Loblaws has actually run many pilots around theft. Mm-hmm. And we all know that the major theft, major cases, like theft of thousands of worth of dollars of food, what we've seen is employees are often involved.
Wow.
Yeah. So obviously, are they putting cams just to make sure that that they're following employees, or is it really about protecting employees? I've honestly never seen any violence towards employees at Loblaw stores ever. I don't know about you, but I've never seen anybody scream. But it seems that it's a problem.
How much leakage is happening as a result of theft in stores? How much of a problem?
That's a very good question, Todd. Because in the U.S., a lot of grocers are out there saying, "Well, theft is costing us $300 million a year or $500 million a year." Not one grocer has actually came out in Canada telling Canadians how much is this costing to them. And I do wonder, why aren't they doing it?
Yeah, you think they would.
So at least people can understand why there are security guards. I mean, a lot of people are coming into grocery stores feeling already guilty because you got cameras everywhere now, you got barriers everywhere, you got security guards. It's getting to a point where it's making a lot of people feel uncomfortable.
Yeah. So, like you said, obviously, if that's the case, then it would impact it would impact the bottom line to some degree. Why not?
Oh, absolutely.
So, I guess we could only speculate that it would be. I don't know what the margin of. What's the margin? 3% for grocery stores?
Yeah, about 3.5%.
Right.
Yeah.
So you start carving into that. Even if it were 0.25%, that still matters, right?
Yeah. Well, we've estimated, like, before COVID, we estimated that the average grocery store was stolen for about $5,000 worth of food products retail a week.
Wow.
A week.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was before COVID. I think things have gotten worse. We haven't really, because it's hard to assess. What is changing, though, is that grocers are starting to declare. They're starting to call the police. And typically, often before COVID, or I'd say a few years ago, they just dealt with cases themselves. Like they just made sure that they were away. One time in Quebec, actually, I walked into a grocery store, and they actually had pictures of people they caught caught stealing.
Yeah.
You were entering the grocery store, and you had their pictures.
Wow, yeah.
It was a wall of shame, basically.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I'm not sure I was comfortable with that approach, but that you're seeing different initiatives to try to encourage people not to steal as much as possible. And of course, there are two different categories. There's people out there like desperate, basically just they need to eat. So that's one category. The other category is organized crime. Organized crime, I think, has become a big, big problem.
All right, so when might we expect to see employees with body-worn cameras here in the Maritimes? Is this going to happen here?
Honestly, I'm doubtful.
Yeah, why is that?
Because I don't think the pilot is going to be well received.
No.
I mean, how would you feel if you go to the cashier and you're being filmed?
Well, I mean, I guess they're not filmed unless they feel they'll turn it on if they feel there's a threatening reason to.
I don't know about that. It is a pilot, but honestly, if they actually implement this policy, my guess is that unions will actually have a say about this. We'll probably have an opinion about that.
Yeah, and why is it incumbent upon a grocery store employee who doesn't make a lot of money in too many cases to confront somebody who's stealing? I would think that might be something that you're going above and beyond, are you not?
Well, that's right. So they're often trained not to do anything or to stand off for their own safety, basically. Because you never know where people are coming from if they're on drugs.
Yeah, that's right. You don't know. You could be putting yourself in a very bad position.
But I'd be shocked to see Sobeys, Metro, other retailers do the same thing. And Loblaw is known to have actually have implemented certain measures. Do you remember last year they actually had signs in stores in Ontario saying we're going to check your receipts once in a while, and that didn't go well. No. Nobody else followed.
No, that's right.
I think that's one other policy that they're trying that is not going to be particularly popular.
But there are police officers, off-duty police officers, that are hired by these stores to patrol, right?
Actually, for people listening in, I mean, don't be surprised to see people roaming around in the grocery store all day long. They're security guards in civilian clothes. So you do see some security guards in uniform, but there are more and more security guards in civilian clothes just walking around, pretending they're customers, but they're just looking. They're just looking for theft. Yeah,
but as theft proliferates and becomes more and more common, the grocery stores will have to do something to combat that, because otherwise it's going to eat into their margin, and then they will have to pass that cost on everybody else.
They're putting labels on products that you don't see, by the way.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah, if you go to the meat counter, they actually have invisible tags underneath. Yeah. You and I can't see them, but it's there. So they're putting tags, anti-theft tags, on products that are very expensive. Not all of them, because it would get too expensive, but the meat counter certainly is a place where they do a lot of that, and I wouldn't be surprised if you see more of that. In the United States, you actually see like actual plastic anti-theft tags visually.
Wow.
Like you can actually see them on cheese and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Again, this is Canada. This is Nova Scotia. I'm not sure people want to see that.
Well, it's okay whether you want to or don't want to see it, but if it's going to protect the owners, the grocery store owners who need to turn a profit, need to make money, you know that as well as anybody, right? Then perhaps that's a necessary evil.
It maybe. Yeah. I think. The first grocery store ever in North America to have allowed people into stores and roam around aisles was Piggly Wiggly in 1917. Before that, you actually showed up at the grocery store with a list, and a clerk was picking up all your stuff for you. You didn't actually, you weren't allowed to go into the grocery store, right? Yeah. So after 1917, there was this social contract allowing people to roam around. As long as you don't steal, we'll trust you, and just pay what you grab, and that's it. That social contract is being compromised right now because of all the theft that we're seeing. But I do hope that at some point things will calm down, and people will reason and will think, well, if you steal, everyone pays, really.
Yeah, that's right. And we're out of time, basically. But smart carts, what happened to smart carts, where you could just kind of go put it would act as a cash register, would it not?
Yeah, well, when they saw people leaving smart carts in the parking lot in the middle of winter, that didn't go well. No, yeah. So they're still working on that.
Yeah, somebody should have thought of that beforehand.
It's Canada, man.
That's right. Well, listen, thanks for the bagels. We appreciate it very much.
My pleasure.
Always great to see you, Sylvain.
Take care.
We'll do it again.
All right.
Sylvain Charlebois, the food professor, senior director, Agri-Food Analytics Lab at Dalhousie University. And let's see. Carney's green funds at Brookfield used Bermuda tax haven to attract investors. That when we come back. So this story on the CBC website, in his time in Brookfield Asset Management, Liberal leader Mark Carney personally co-chaired 2 investment funds dedicated to the transition to a net zero carbon economy worth a total of $25 billion. Those funds were registered in Bermuda, among other locations, allowing investors to benefit from significant tax advantages, according to information obtained by Radio Canada. The funds created while Carney was on Brookfield's board of directors are Brookfield Global Transition Fund, $15 billion, and Brookfield Global Transition Fund, $10 billion, and launched in 2021 and 2024, respectively. Joining us to talk about all of this is Silas Xuereb, a political analyst with the group Canadians for Fair Taxation. Silas, thanks for joining the show.
Hi, thanks for having me on.
All right, tell us first of all about your group, Canadians for Fair Taxation.
Yeah, sorry, and just there's a small correction. It's Canadians for Tax Fairness, was corrected later on. But basically, our group advocates for ensuring that everyone pays their fair share of taxes, especially focused on large corporations and the wealthiest. And so we do a lot of advocacy to close tax loopholes, such as the use of tax havens.
All right, so tell us about this. How common is this type of thing for billionaires to shelter money?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it is super common. What we're seeing that happens here with Brookfield and Mark Carney is not out of the ordinary by any means. Although Brookfield does seem to be quite adept at using tax havens in particular. A report our organization did a couple of years ago identified 40 subsidiaries that Brookfield has in identified tax havens. 19 of their subsidiaries were in Bermuda in particular. But this isn't unique just to Brookfield. All sorts of large corporations use these types of schemes these days. And this costs the Canadian public billions of dollars every year. The Tax Justice Network estimates that Canada loses over $5 billion in tax revenue every year because of tax havens.
All right. The argument, or one of the arguments that those who are invested in these funds, it's better for the fund holders because the money's sheltered, and they'll eventually pay the tax when they sell it anyway back here in Canada. They'll end up paying tax in the long run. Is that legitimate?
There's some legitimacy to that, but the tax system is already set up to account for these types of things. So, we have the corporate income tax for a reason, as a sort of withholding tax, right? Corporations are supposed to pay tax on the income that they earn each year. Mm-hmm. And then when that money gets paid out to investors, say as a dividend, there's what's called the dividend tax credit that allows the individual taxpayer to offset some of their tax burden to account for the taxes that the corporation already paid. So this is really already structured into the system, and the use of tax havens is something that was definitely not not created intentionally, but has happened because of a result of a patchwork of agreements that Canada has put in place with other countries that allow basically the company to avoid paying the corporate income tax neither in Canada nor in the other jurisdiction.
Okay, will the taxes eventually get paid in Canada?
Some taxes might get paid, but less, definitely less. As I said earlier, there is definitely to the tune of billions of dollars a year that are avoided through the use of tax havens. So, that's not to say that zero tax will end up being paid in Canada, but it would definitely be far less than were the firm properly registered in Canada.
All right. So the fact that everybody, not everybody, but many billionaires, millionaires, billionaires use this loophole or take advantage of this, is that a good enough excuse to say that Mark Carney's just doing what everybody else does?
Well, I mean, I think there's the fact that people in the private sector are always going to do this, and then there's the question of being a politician and what Carney is going to do about this problem as a politician. So I think that we can understand on the one hand, perhaps, that Carney was doing his job at Brookfield. Of course, we can criticize him for choosing that. That's what he chose to do for his career, is to try and earn the Brookfield and wealthy investors a lot of money. But the question now is, okay, if you're going to be Prime Minister or the leader of the Liberal Party, what is your plan? What are you going to do to close these loopholes? He's said, obviously, he understands how this works very intimately. He understands how companies can use these loopholes to minimize their tax burden. So let's see him come out with a plan to say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to end, tax agreements with tax havens so that we don't give these types of corporate structures exemptions from corporate income taxation. We can require companies to give detailed public reporting to break down where their profits are earned, so we can identify when structures are set up only for tax purposes, and we can prevent that from happening. So I think we're hoping that Carney and all the other political leaders come out with a clear plan to combat this kind of thing.
Okay, he has a blind trust now, so he has no say over any of this right now, right?
He has no say over, say, the Brookfield funds, yes, or his own personal finances. But as a politician, as he's currently the Prime Minister of Canada, he has a lot of power to determine whether these types of structures are possible moving forward.
Okay, so is it advantageous for the fund itself to be tax sheltered like the growth itself? I'm assuming that it would be.
Yeah, so I think one thing Carney tried to claim yesterday is, this only benefits the investors who are these pension funds or something like that, right? Yeah. And there's, I can't say that's false, but also a typical structure for this fund, for these types of funds, is that the fund manager, in this case Brookfield, receives about 20% of the profits of the fund. So it is likely a significant tax saving for Brookfield itself as well, not just the investors who invested in the fund.
Okay, so let's suggest down the road that Mark Carney wants to divest himself of the fund, whatever it is, the green fund, whatever it is that's invested and sheltered. At that point, as he sells, does he then have to declare that income in Canada and pay tax in Canada?
So just to clarify, we can't say for sure whether Carney himself has shares in this fund or anything like that. I don't think that has been publicly disclosed yet. Okay. He obviously helped set it up, and typically people who help set it up get some share of the profits, but I haven't seen guaranteed, reporting on proving that yet. Although, yes, we hope that Carney, opens up, shows us his tax filings so that we can say for sure whether he's still going to be profiting from these types of funds over the next few years. But I'm not 100% sure whether he is at this point.
Okay, but back to the question, for those who would say nothing to see here, because eventually the tax will get paid in Canada. Yeah,
well, again, the Carney would possibly, let's just say there are all sorts of ways that he can structure receiving payments from the fund to not pay tax on it. Another way, for example, is even if he ends up paying taxes on it at the end, by deferring those taxes, by not having to pay annual taxes, right? The corporate income tax is levied annually, whereas if someone just pays taxes after 10 years of their money sitting in a fund, they're going to have benefited from having been able to accumulate that money, not having to pay annual tax on it over that decade.
The bottom line is, it's a worse deal for Canadian tax, it's a worse deal for the Canadian coffers. That's the bottom line here.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah. The bottom line is money that should be paid to the Canadian coffers every year is going to wealthy shareholders, large corporations instead, to the tune of billions of dollars, and that's money that we sorely need to invest in, public education and healthcare and other services right now. Okay,
so when Jagmeet Singh and other politicians say that, look, and Pierre Poilievre say that these are the rules for the rich, that they can avoid paying taxes, while normal people, have to pay tax on investment year over year if they're non-registered, and if they're registered, would certainly when they cash it in, that's true. Then that it's not a level playing field is the point. That's accurate, is it?
Yeah, I agree 100%. I think there's the wealthy have all sorts of access these days to these large tax planning organizations, right? Who go through the tax code in minute detail to find every loophole they can, who use structures all over the world in different countries to help the wealthy minimize the amount of taxes they pay. And the average Canadian doesn't have access to those things. And we can see this in the data. We have data showing that if you look at, the wealthiest 1% as a whole, they actually pay a much smaller proportion of their income in taxes than the median Canadian, because they're able to use all these different structures to reduce their tax burden.
Silas, interesting chat. Thanks for doing this. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me.
All right, take care. Silas Xuereb, political analyst with the group Canadians for Tax Fairness. I saw this story on the CBC website. Family scrambling as Halifax Daycare is set to close with less than 2 months' notice. Landlord has plans to redevelop the property, according to daycare owner. We'll talk to a mother about all this when we come back. I saw this story on the CBC website. It took Brittany Naugler over 17 months on various wait lists to finally secure a daycare, a spot for her 2-year-old daughter, but now she has to start the process all over again. Joining us to talk about all of this is Brittany. Brittany, thanks for joining the show.
Yeah, no problem. Hi, Todd.
Hi there. So tell everybody your story, I guess, would be the best place to start.
Yeah, so after a lengthy battle to find a daycare spot, which we only secured because we were looking for September, which seems to be the only time there are openings when bigger kids move up to school and free up some spaces, we finally did have a couple of options, and we picked what we felt was best for our family. Absolutely love the center, love the teachers, love the kids that go there. Did not know that there was any possibility of property redevelopment, anything going on. And then 2 weeks ago, I had an email that didn't say the daycare had been sold, but it said that there was a new email address if you paid by EFT. And I recognized it was the name of a different center. So I said, did this center buy our daycare? And I was told yes, but nothing was changing. Only to get an email Monday of last week that the daycare would be closing because the landlord was not renewing the lease as the property would be redeveloped. So I immediately had to start contacting every daycare in Halifax and then moving through HRM with many, many immediate no responses. Our wait lists are over 500 people long. There could be a spot in September, maybe, possibly, at the earliest.
Wow. What's that feel like? I mean, the frustration level must be beyond belief.
It's horrifying.
Yeah.
And, I'm speaking out because I know a lot of people don't want to put their name or face forward, and I'm always going to advocate for injustices and for people to do the right thing. And this came out of nowhere. It's absolutely devastating. Families are just rocked by it. The teachers at the daycare don't understand what has happened. I I don't even know. I'm not the only person that's in this situation. That's 80 licensed childcare spaces that are just closed with less than 2 months' notice. And there's no way that there's 80 spaces available in the community for these kids to go.
What happened to $10 a day daycare and all that stuff that the Liberals rolled out?
Yeah, I mean, there have been fee reductions, which is great for families like me, making daycare affordable. It's still very expensive. You know, most people can't afford on a single income household to live these days. So you need two people working, which means you need daycare. But part of the problem with the fee reduction is that it has made it accessible. And so people that maybe would have found other ways with extended family or only having one person working, they've accessed the licensed childcare, and they should have the ability to, but there just aren't the spaces. So it's created a huge scarcity of licensed daycare spaces in Nova Scotia.
Why do you think there are not the spaces? I mean, perhaps you don't know, but perhaps you can speculate. Why do you think that there are not enough spaces?
I mean, there just aren't. There's not enough physical locations. There's not enough.
No, but I'm not doubting that there aren't. That certainly you're correct in that there aren't. But why do you suppose that there's not enough entrepreneurs or this industry is not robust enough for in order to meet the need? What's going on here?
Yeah, I mean, I can't speak to all of that necessarily, but I do think that a lot of businesses closed when the changes to the childcare regulations came in place. With this fee reduction, it became no longer sustainable. So people did close businesses.
Well, so the government with the fee reduction, part of the $10 daycare plan, do you feel as though that ironically led to less spaces?
Overall, like in terms of net spaces, yes, because they certainly have opened more spaces, but in terms of like net spaces, there's not really been an increase because places have closed.
Wow. So what might you have to do here?
Well, I've contacted every center. I reached out to the Department of Early Childhood Education. I reached out to my MLA, the MLA where my daycare is, with, I would say, mostly unhelpful responses.
Okay, to get into more what you mean by unhelpful responses.
We'll look into this. Thank you for bringing this concern forward. And one person sent me the link to the directory of licensed childcare facilities, which I found deeply unhelpful. And my response was, do better.
Who's your MLA?
My MLA is Krista Gallagher.
And is Krista Gallagher a PC or Liberal or NDP? Or wouldn't be Liberal,
NDP.
But NDP, yeah. So what's the response been from your MLA?
I haven't had a personalized response from Krista. They're looking into it. The MLA for the daycare's constituency did respond and has been interviewed by CBC. So they're at least, concerned that their constituency has lost a daycare business in their community. But it's not just people from that direct constituency that are at that daycare; it's other people too.
Yeah. So you may end up having to leave your employment. Is that correct?
That would be if I wasn't able to secure a spot. I don't have any access to another choice, and I do have a strong possibility out of sheer luck for a space, but I only know one other family that's even had a possibility of finding a spot. And so I don't know what people are going to be doing. For me, that's if I wasn't able to have childcare, I would have to leave my job and try to find a different job that maybe I could change hours or do something different. I love my job. I don't want to leave it. And I would risk losing the ability to pay my mortgage and have a house. I don't want to live in my car or in someone's basement if I don't have to.
Wow, the stress of this is, and again, just would be monumental, and probably hundreds of other people living in the area going through the exact same thing. I would say, right?
Absolutely, it's very stressful. It's horrifying, and I don't think it's right that a daycare should be closing with such short notice. It makes it impossible for people. It's not like we have the ability to pick and choose places. You have to kind of take the option that you're given if you happen to be lucky enough to get into a spot. And then once you think you've got it and you're okay for a couple of years, to be blindsided and have to start all over again is an absolute nightmare.
Brittany, thanks for sharing your story. I appreciate it very much, and good luck with all this.
Thanks so much.
All right, take care. Brittany Naugler. Interesting story. Now I get some time for you. What is on your mind on this Thursday? The way to reach us, 902-405-6000. What would you like to get into today? Again, 902-405-6000. Your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Do you care that the Prime Minister of this country and running to be, again, the Prime Minister of this country, has money sheltered in a tax haven through his business and through funds, and those who enjoy the funds also have that money sheltered? Is that something that you care about? The argument could be made that he's not the first to do it and won't be the last, and that this is kind of the modus operandi of the ultra wealthy. Paul Martin did it, of course. And the Panama Papers were released a number of years ago, which revealed a lot of prominent names, Canadians. Do you care? Mr. Irving, New Brunswick, a maritime icon, runs a shipyard down here. The same thing, has protected his money since the 50s and 60s, for goodness sakes. So is this something that you care about? And I'm not saying, by the way, I'm not leading you to suggest you should or you shouldn't. I would just want to get your opinion, because we were chatting this morning and some here in the newsroom suggested that people don't care. So I thought I would throw it out there in a as neutral way as I possibly can. Do you care about this? Because the opposition would say that you should care, or we shouldn't say the opposition, those seeking to also be the Prime Minister, Jagmeet Singh and Pierre Poilievre would tell you that it's something that you should care about. That an average Canadian pays tax year over year through the nose and can't shelter any money. So why would it be that the Prime Minister in waiting, or the prospective Prime Minister, or the Prime Minister-elect, or whatever we're calling him right now, enjoys his money to be sheltered? So that, or whatever else you want to get into. 902-405-6000. Give us a call. What do you want to talk about? Let's start it with Tim. Hello, Tim.
Well, Todd, how are you?
I'm well, you?
Really good. As it relates to the sheltering of money, you discussed it. He's not the first. He won't be the last. If he's not doing anything illegal, then he's not violating the law. So, I'm sure many others wish they could do it. They can't. So, let's move on. As it relates to the Bay, absolutely tasteless that the company as a whole would allocate money to the management staff, but as it relates to severance, not give the employees anything. And yet they're relying on these employees to come into work every day, do their job until, whenever it closes. But in my opinion, that's why people unionize, because, when you hear something like this and companies doing this to a group of people that have been with that employer, it's absolutely tasteless and shameless.
Yeah, I saw that story yesterday. We're actually going to talk about it tomorrow. It is pathetic that management would be getting millions in severance while they or in a bonus, while no severance for two employees. That is absolutely ridiculous.
How do you walk around the store knowing that you're going to get, whatever, X number of dollars, and I'm behind a counter somewhere, knowing that I may not have any ability to pay my bills after the store closes?
Yeah, that's right.
And that's absolutely a shame. Anyway, thanks for the opportunity. You have yourself a good day.
Okay, take care. 902-405-6000. Hi, Rick. Hey, Rick.
Oh, hi.
Hi. Go ahead.
Gee. Sorry, man. I actually didn't hit the phone there just as I was... anyway, look, quick question. I can't find Mark Carney's net worth. I was just curious about, we're talking about all these different funds and and whatnot. And I just went to Forbes, and they don't have anything about Mark Carney. There's a few things that say $7 million is his net worth. I kind of think that must be a ridiculous comment, looking at the career that he's had.
He'd be worth much more than that, for sure, I would
anyway,
say.
It's not a crucial thing,
Yeah.
but I was just curious about it. But on the subject of blind trust, okay, you've been a landlord before. Imagine you're a landlord and you have 3 or 4 properties in a town, and you get elected as councillor. Well, you don't really have to put them in a blind trust, but any decisions that are made on council that affect those, you probably don't, you won't vote on them.
Mm-hmm.
But you still know what's going on. And there'd be the same thing that Truman said: if you get rich while you're a politician, you're a crook. And anyway, so if Carney does have, some people say maybe $1 billion, and that isn't even that much anymore. But he, regardless if he was in a blind trust or had a blind trust, he would be easily influential in many different ways. With government decisions, if you lower the tax rate on this or raise it on that, those things make a big difference. So, as with the uber rich, and we don't know that he is, that's sort of the problem to me. You kind of got to have a different outlook on it. Anyway, it's not a criticism of him. It's just lack of knowledge that it just seems to me that people in the media would want to know that stuff. The second thing is if Trump puts across-the-board tariffs on all automotive parts coming into the United States, how is that going to hurt us? Okay, because the reasoning I have is that the Americans are still going to need the auto parts. So whether they buy them from us or Europe, I mean, we're way closer and tied in. So they're just going to keep buying our auto parts. They have no choice. They don't make them themselves, or they wouldn't have already be buying them. So I just can't get my head around how Trump's tariffs are going to hurt us way more than our own tariffs are going to hurt us.
Well, the reciprocal tariffs will hurt us probably just as much, if not more, than Trump's tariffs, because you're right. For a while anyway, they'll have to pay it, and because they can't get the parts anywhere else. But the complexity of it, Rick, as you know, and everybody knows this, that these parts often move across the border 8, 9. I've heard as much as 10 times before a car is built. So the complexity of it all is there. But you're absolutely correct in that, and this is why Ian Lee, who I know you're a big fan of, thinks reciprocal tariffs are foolish and ridiculous, and he thinks that it's stupid, and why punish ourselves? And I think there's some validity to that argument.
Yeah, and there's one more thing Ian Lee said. I heard him on Tuesday on the Rob Snow Show, and he said, you have this personality of Trump, who is a personal guy. Okay, he builds personal relationships, but he, I guess I would say he tends to be vindictive. Okay, and in the case of the Trudeau, I mean, I'm not going to mince words. He hated Justin Trudeau for what Trudeau did back in the first term, where he was, all nicey to Trump's face, and then as soon as he was out of the room, he was criticizing him and laughing at him. So he holds a grudge on Trudeau, and he dislikes the politics of Mark Carney. That's the nicest way I could put it. So if you want someone that's going to piss Trump off and make him hate Canada, Mark Carney's your guy. I'll end it there.
Okay, thanks, Rick.
According to Ian Lee. That's right. Okay, bye-bye.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Give us a buzz. 902-405-6000. That is the way to get in on the fun. Hello, Owen.
You there?
I'm here.
Perfect. first of all, I'm probably 20 years older than you are.
Okay.
But I regained some faith in the younger generation. I saw a thing last night on the internet where the Canadian teenagers are calling the toilet the Oval Office, and the water in the toilet is called the Gulf of Trump.
Oh, there you go.
And those brown things that float around, they're called musk.
Okay.
So
all right.
I thought I just had to share that. But anyway, back in the olden days, okay, in the way we used to do it is we used to buy blue chip stocks, physically hold them back in those days, take them down to either the Caymans, the Turks, Caicos, or maybe the British Virgin Islands, and you go down there and you open up you drop them in a company down there, and they have banking secrecy, but it was bearer shares. The bearer shares of that company, you put them in a mason jar, bring them back home, and you can just bury them in the ground. But you had a contact down there that would take any interest or whatever, and then you would borrow, okay, from that company, pay an outrageous interest rate, and that was written off. So, to say that this is not going on today, and these taxes are finally it's not getting taxed. These guys that do it's not getting taxed. They're getting it scot-free.
Okay, thanks for the call.
Thanks.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Barry, hello.
Hello there. The rule really is, isn't it? Tax avoidance, we all do. Tax evasion is illegal. What he did is tax avoidance. So where's the crime?
Well, nobody said there's a crime. Nobody suggests there's a crime.
If anybody ever said, "Oh, I can avoid paying tax on this, but I'm going to anyway," he get a trip to the guys with the butterfly nets and the white sushi be coming after you.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Paul Martin. They said about him flying flags of convenience on his boats. But if you're going to compete in the shipping world where every single buddy's doing it, and you didn't do it, you would go bankrupt.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're dealing, what I'm more worried about is how we can deal with Mr. Trump.
Yeah.
I mean, right now, I feel sorry for Lockheed. Trump has decided that after they decided there are no kill switches on those jets, Trump said he's going to have the power reduced by 10% in case the United States becomes enemy with NATO. I mean, why would you say something so ridiculous? It's reached the stage that Europe's not even calling it the United States anymore. They're calling it the Trump regime. I mean, that's the leader for France and Britain both use that term, and the president of Denmark used that term, Trump regime. So it's, we need somebody that can deal, and I think where Carney's already been on the world stage and pretty successful, that's more what we should be looking at. That's just my opinion.
Okay, Barry, thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. And look, it's not illegal, at least not to my knowledge, what they've done here with Brookfield management assets and these funds and these green funds and to shelter them in offshore accounts. That said, though, is there an ethical question? And for some, there isn't. For some of you out there, that you say, listen, it's fair game, it's legal, it's a loophole, everybody does it who's wealthy, and nothing to see here. Others would say otherwise. Others would say, if you want to be the Prime Minister of this country, and you're asking everybody else to pay tax through the nose, and middle class people and nurses and construction workers and whomever else, contractors, you will pay through the nose every nickel, every dime, and if you don't, then CRA will come after you, and they do. Then why is it fundamentally okay to have rich people be able to skirt the system and shelter their money? But that's been happening forever, folks. It's nothing new. Now, some of you out there, again, would have problems with that. Others don't. It's a judgment call, and this is what I'm asking you. This is why I bring it up, and I think it's worthy discussion for sure. 902-405-6000. Mark, hello.
Morning, Todd. I'm just listening to all that stuff going on taxes there. I paid $31,000 in taxes during the year, and I got to pay another $4,000 now after I got my taxes done. And I can't afford to hide any kind of money, so I don't have to pay.
Yeah.
So, yes, they all should be paying their fair just like anybody else. And they should even be paying more, because most of them own companies and things like that. And they got $15 an hour making millions and billions. But I call today for Sean Fraser. When somebody in government, like ministers, leave, whether they're voted out or whatever the case is, there's a transitional fee that they get, which, if I'm not mistaken, is $100,000. When Sean Fraser left, I wonder if he got that.
Yeah, that's a good question. Did he get some type of severance?
Yeah, and if he did, is he giving it back?
Definitely should. That's a great question. That's a great question, because Parliament was dissolved, so therefore he was done. And did he get any money? And if so, should he? Yeah, he should absolutely have to pay that back if he did. I don't know the answer, but I think it's a good question.
Yeah, and the thing is, the whole people in what is it, Nova West, where he's reading it?
Yeah.
I hope they're paying attention that this guy's just after his own bank account and his own pension, and he's got nothing to do with actually helping the people down there. And if he wants to solve the issue, crisis of homelessness and he's the one in this mess.
Okay, Mark. Appreciate the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Yeah, I don't know if in fact Sean Fraser would have received some type of severance or whatever it might be. But if he has, he should certainly pay it back. Kurt, hello.
Oh, hi, Todd.
Hi there.
Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Look, I just want to quickly wish you and Kelly all the best for your upcoming wedding. That is great news.
Thank you, sir.
And yeah, and it's just another good news in terms of how well you've recovered.
Thank you.
So just want to pass that on. Look, I want to talk a bit about Carney. I'm not sure if that answers your questions, but there is no doubt in my mind who we should be looking for. We're in a tariff war and other kinds of things, and I think Carney is not a polished politician, but he has demonstrated doing well, and he's the guy that I'd like to lead us through this election as Prime Minister, and I think he's meeting with his cabinet today and put forward ideas. I think he's probably going to be the best guy to deal with the trumpeter and on the tariff thing. But a couple of points I'd like to make.
Sure.
It seems that we're talking about carve-outs, the auto sector. A lot of people are spending time down there in the auto sector. And I think they should be looking at putting in place a program that affects all workers who have been affected by the tariff, not to do a carve out for the auto workers or for the crab fishermen who were outside the St. John's meeting. You'll spend far too much time looking into defining who's eligible and whatever. If they've been laid off in that period, I think they've got incredible tools that they can put to work, employment insurance and work sharing and retraining and that kind of things, and maybe community infrastructure. Come up with some programs that will be aimed at anybody who's been impacted, not just the auto sector or lumber or whatever. So I would like to make that as my first point. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Well, I think you make some valid points, and I don't disagree with what you're saying.
Okay, great. And I just think that we should be talking more about what's important for Atlantic Canada. Even before these tariffs came in, they talked about high-speed light rail between Toronto and Quebec, and Quebec has come out and said they want a pipeline to stop in Quebec. I don't think that's good enough. I think the pipeline should come down. Personally, I think I'd love to see it come to Halifax, but I think the Irvings have They have the biggest refinery in Canada and one time in North America. Those would be the guys that could do things like that. And I'd like to talk about, not me, I don't have all the ideas. I'd like us to think about things that should be done during this tariff war. And I'm on side with our Premier and suggesting, I took a look at the bridge that was built in Montreal. I went way back to the St. Lawrence Seaway and started to talk about cost sharing. And I've always said the impact on our economy when ships could sail right through to Toronto to Detroit and whatever made a dramatic difference on the natural advantage that Halifax had. The cost funding was 71%. I thought I was going to find out how much provinces, 71% Canadian federal government, 31% American, because it certainly was some impact. No money from Ontario, no money from Quebec. I stand to be corrected. That's just what I found out. So I think it's time to think about what we could do, and what I was referring to, agreement with our Premier. We've got is it the Chignecto Isthmus?
Yes.
And, they're dragging that out that, New Brunswick and Nova Scotia should share 50% of the cost. How about the bridges in Montreal? How about the St. Lawrence Seaway? Why don't they do things so that we can further develop? And I think that's all I want to say. I don't want to
Kurt.
take up too much
Okay,
time,
I'm up against the break. Thanks for the call, pal.
Great. Bye.
Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, folks, give us a call. We got lots of open lines for you on this Thursday. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. What would you like to get into today? Again, we got open lines for you. A quick email or two, then back to the phones. Ryan says, I wanted to share my thoughts on Canada's counter tariffs in response to U.S. protectionism. Simply put, they're just as stupid as Trump's tariffs were in the first place. We can't fight stupid with stupid. This elbows-up approach might feel good politically, like finally hitting the school bully back, but this isn't a schoolyard. It's diplomacy, and it demands more than a knee-jerk reaction just because it polls well. Instead of retaliatory tariffs that'll only make life even more expensive for Canadians, we should focus on diversifying our export markets and strengthening interprovincial trade, both long-standing PPC policies. Canada needs to take a smarter long-term approach rather than engaging in an expensive trade war we cannot win. 902-405-6000. And again, Ian Lee is somebody who's business professor at Carleton University. Take it as it will. Not everybody agrees with Ian Lee, but he says this exact same thing. That he says if it's bad policy for the initiating country to implement a tariff, it's bad policy and just as stupid to implement counter tariffs. And yes, it feels politically like a win and elbows up and all of that stuff. And fighting back and hitting back hard. But in the end, as we've talked about, a tariff is a tax on the country in which it is imposed. So if, in fact, we impose retaliatory tariffs, counter tariffs, on products coming back into this country, then Canadian consumers pay that tariff. That's the bottom line, folks. It's not magic. 902-405-6000. Sean, hello.
Hi, Todd. How are you?
I'm well. You?
I'm not too bad. I just have a couple of points I wanted to make. I want your opinion on it because I listen to your show all the time, and you get people complaining about the politics of each side. But in the big scheme of things, where Donald Trump is putting these huge tariffs on Nova Scotia, or on Canada, don't you think we should just come together as a country and fight back with everything that we possibly have instead of waiting for these $100 billion tariffs to come into effect? Shouldn't we impose them right away? So it would almost makes more sense to me, just so we're not getting pushed around. We've always laid on the backs of Americans, sending our crude oil to them for them to refine, send back to us as gasoline, diesel fuel, furnace oil, whatnot, but we're not taking advantage of our own resources. I say build a wall, like Donald Trump suggested, between Mexico and the U.S. Build a concrete wall between Canada and the U.S. We don't need anything from them. We can sustain our own country with our own minerals and just everything. We don't need the U.S.
Yeah, actually, we do, Sean. We do need their consumer base. We need to sell our products into the United States. We do need them.
It's just so frustrating. It's so frustrating.
Yeah, because Sean, it's like this. We have a small country here in Canada, relatively speaking, of 45 million people spread across a huge geographic span. And in order to monetize any production of any goods, whether it be building machines or critical minerals or whatever it is, an economy of scale is needed in order to maximize that investment. And because we've got millions and millions and millions of people concentrated in small areas in the United States, which is close to us, that means that means the business plan is advantageous in a way that is hard to replicate anywhere else, Sean. So unfortunately, we do need them.
Yeah, I guess you do make a really good point there, Todd. But
yeah,
I'm just thinking about our natural resources, like Goldsboro in Gosboro County with the natural gas plant that was proposed 20 years ago, came online a few years ago, and then went away again. Why was that? Why? Yeah. We need to be able to sustain our own country.
Yeah, I hear you. But when it comes to natural gas, for example, let's suggest that Nova Scotia develops natural gas and shale gas, and they scale it up. It would be much more profitable to sell that to Europe or to other markets than it would be for us to consume it ourselves, which seems crazy. But that's the way it is.
We don't even have that. We don't even have a plant. Like the proposed plants aren't even being built. No. Someone needs to grow a set and actually start building refineries, building the natural gas plants, something that we can actually make money and we can become rich, because everybody knows what Donald Trump's doing. He's trying to get these companies back to the U.S. to build his vehicles.
Absolutely.
So that way he's bringing the money into the U.S. for the U.S. economy.
That's right.
Why he's doing all that.
That's right.
So why would we do the same thing?
Because we don't have enough people. Because Sean, we don't have enough people to warrant it. The United States can, when you've got millions, 400+ million people, you can kind of sustain that through your own natural financial ecosystem. Here in Canada, we can't do that because we only have 45 million people, and we're spread out from coast to coast to coast. It's not the same.
You are so right. You're so right. All right, Todd. Well, thank you very much. I don't want to take up any more of your time.
Okay, Sean. Thanks for the call.
You are right.
Okay, thank you. 902-405-6000. I don't know if I'm right or wrong. That's just my theory anyway. It'll still take the United States at least a decade and lots of pain and misery. And not only that, but things are going to cost a lot more money in the United States because the reason why manufacturing went to Mexico and went to China and left the United States and Canada for that matter was because cheap labor. It's no secret, folks. The Walmarts and Costco's and all these places, everything comes from China because it costs exponentially less, significantly less money to produce. So for Donald Trump to say, well, we're going to make it all here in North America, well, that's all well and good, but your cost structure is going to go way up. So that's why free trade, many say, is advantageous because it keeps for many products cost down due to cheap labor. So there are always winners and losers, but anyway, 902-405-6000. That's just my take on it, folks. Look, if I'm wrong, somebody please correct me. Fred, hello.
No, you're pretty much right on that point. With respect to Carney and the tax haven and all that stuff, really don't care. What he was doing was making money for his company, which is what he was hired to do. And the loopholes are there. It's there for him to use. It's not his fault that they're there. And so, no, it doesn't matter to me. He's a successful businessman. For the last 2 days, I've been listening to enough, but I guess the guys in Chris's term would say, drinking the Kool-Aid, the blue Kool-Aid, complaining. 3-4 months ago, it was the guys in the Liberal Party complaining because didn't have a hope in hell of getting like a handful of seats. So I kind of like what's happening right now. I'm happy that Carney's got the Liberal Party back towards the center. I've always said I'm a centrist, and he's right where I want him to be. And I've sat there, I've listened to all the stuff he's come up with. Mm-hmm. He turned around, and I did fact check him with Steve Murphy. That was a great thing. I went on there just to give him a positive up on that. It was Carney that first turned around and verbally said that he would take the taxes off of the PEI bridge. Mm-hmm. And then the PCs came back 2 days later with a letter and wrote it and said they would do that. It was Carney who turned around and said, I will take 1% off the tax, and they turned around 3 days later and said, well, I'll take 2.25% off the tax. And I don't know if you watched the CBC last night, but they showed the breakdown of what that meant. Okay, that tax, 1% off the tax, is only to those who make $57,000 and below. Everybody else's tax stayed the same at 15%.
Yeah.
Okay, and then he showed the difference. Overall, Canada, his was $5 billion. Carney's was $5 billion. It would be a deficit to Canada, obviously. And for the PC one, it was $40 billion. Mm-hmm. And as one economist said, we can't afford that because we also have to spend $40 billion on the, military to get up to where we need to be for the 2%. We need to spend this much money to do these other things. And I'll tell you, that fact checker worked out pretty good.
Yeah.
So I'm saying I am leaning towards Carney. That is most definitely sure. He knows what he's talking about. I was happy that he dropped everything and went in and is dealing with the tariffs. And one final point on those tariffs, Todd.
Sure, yeah.
Nobody wins in the tariff thing, but you got to make the other guy hurt. You've got to be able to watch their stock markets drop because that's where his base is. Mm-hmm. He's in the Republican Party, and when those numbers go down, he's of no use to them, and they will get rid of him.
Okay, but Fred, by Canada imposing retaliatory tariffs, how does that doesn't do that? That doesn't affect the U.S. economy, does it?
Well, yeah, it does. For example, if you put tariffs on electric, okay, if Ontario turned around and put 25% on electric, they have no choice. They got to buy that electricity with a 25% tariff on it.
Yeah. Well, okay, besides that, though, besides electricity, things that are coming back into Canada from the United States, retaliatory tariffs, we are the ones as consumers will pay that tariff and tax. So,
and you know how to beat that? You don't buy their product.
No, but there are companies and producers that have to, like metal workers and for example, Moosehead. Moosehead buys their tins lids from America. Now it's strange because the aluminum is processed in Canada, then it gets shipped to the United States, and it's made into cans and tins, and then Moosehead buys it back. So they have to import that. So they will then be paying potentially, if this is included in these tariffs, 25% on all of those tins. So it does impact in ways that you can't avoid, is what I'm getting at.
Yeah, no, you're right, but we also need an entrepreneur to take that on so we don't have to deal with that.
Yeah. Okay. All right, Fred. Thanks for the call, pal.
All right, bye.
Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Let's see here. Let's talk to Steve. Hello, Steve.
Hello, Todd. How are you today?
Well, you?
I'm very good, very good. I just wanted to talk for a couple of minutes about Mark Carney and the Bermuda tax haven. I have no problem with him being involved in that whatsoever. And as a matter of fact, I'm just the opposite. I'm glad that he's involved in those types of things because what I think what he understands is that money is like water. It finds the path of least resistance. And Canada as a country is going to need massive investments in our country over the decades. And he has to find, or Canada has to find, people all the time who can write 9-0 checks. In other words, multi-billionaires. One of their first things that they ask at any investment is how can I tax shelter this? So he understands that money flows globally now, and he already, not only does he have an understanding, but he's been able to be a part of raising a significant amount of money, $25 billion in this tax haven. So that's who I actually want leading our country is someone that has that understanding, and he's probably as astute as anybody in the financial world globally.
Okay, what about those who would say that they feel as though that he's out of touch because the regular average Canadian business person, entrepreneur, whomever, nurse, teacher, has to pay tax through the nose, and CRA, if not, will hound them until they do. What's your response to that?
There's $408 billion in Canada sitting in our RSPs and our RIFs that allows the average Canadian to defer a lot of taxation on their income over the years. If I started at age 20 for 51 years, I can defer paying taxes on that. The funds will grow over time. And I actually get money back each year, probably, or don't have to pay as much in taxes. At age 71, I then turn around and can draw that money out over an extended period of time to allow me. So there is something in Canada for the average Canadian that's making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year. We can't write the $1 billion checks.
Right. But I guess for the plumber or for the contractor or for some of these people that can't defer money or can't, I suppose they could max out their TFSA or their RSP. There are people who are paying through the nose taxation who would say that why is it that a multi-billionaire can shelter money offshore while I got to pay every year through the nose? I guess I can see why. I get your point. I do. I totally take your point. But I can also see why for some they would be uncomfortable with that situation.
Yeah, but what the government of Canada has done, they've actually set up these programs for Canadians in hopefully being able to take advantage of them. It doesn't mean that all Canadians can, but at least governments over the years have established these programs so that there is at least something out there that they can work on towards. If you're making $70,000 or $80,000 or $90,000 or whatever it is today a year, you're just not in the same class as the guy that can write the $1 billion check. The $1 billion check guy, because money travels globally now,
right?
And if we are considered to be a country that is not tax advantageous for them, Canada is going to suffer because of that. So I understand that the average person is having difficulty with Carney perhaps being involved in this tax haven, but those tax havens don't exist without billionaires writing big checks.
Right. Okay, Steve, appreciate your time. Thanks for the call, pal.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, take care. Let's talk to Paul. Hello, Paul.
Hey, how you doing?
I'm well, you?
Well, pretty good. Just watching about the automobile tariffs, and one of your callers was mistaken. It's also on auto parts.
Yeah, absolutely.
Basically, Donald Trump is repatriating the automobile business back to the United States, and I'll tell you this much: it's over for Canada. When Mark Carney says with Lana Payne for Unifor that we're going to build an insular Canadian automobile industry, well, we don't have any brands. They're either, you're either got Honda or Toyota in Southern Ontario, or a Ford or a GM or Chrysler plant, those are all going to go to the United States. And, it's sad to say, but, this is part of, his economic warfare.
Mm-hmm.
It's beyond the trade thing. But just to tell you something, a little information that I noticed.
Mm-hmm.
I look at information all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
And with our, the biggest complaint of the NDP and a lot of people, including, myself, is processing our petroleum, products to have a finished product that goes out, so we get value added.
Mm-hmm.
Well, there was a former British colony that just sold 2 million barrels of jet fuel to the United States. And these people go hell in a basement to put up a refinery that's twice the size of the Irving refinery.
Mm-hmm.
And annually, we export about 25% of that to the United States as far as jet fuel. That country is Nigeria.
Mm-hmm.
We just got beat by Nigeria because with one of your callers, they were saying about, the LNG plant thing. The Liberals killed that. They've killed everything as far as, us gainfully upgrading our price, getting into international markets. Stop blaming Donald Trump for the mismanagement of this country for the last 10 years. And Mark Carney saying stuff like that, as far as building, an automobile industry here,
mm-hmm.
Canadian Indigenous, well, where are you going to export to? Because we have the same problem in regards to the American branded vehicles going to Europe. They have huge barriers, and same with Asia.
Yeah.
There's no. It's just like the Avro Arrow all over again.
Yeah.
You're not going to sell from this small market, be able to afford all of that, and be successful. Anyways,
okay, Paul. Okay, thanks for the call, pal. Take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We'll open the phone lines again tomorrow between 11 and 12. It's the last Thursday of the month. That means it's our Ask the Vet segment with Dr. Jeff Goodall, runs Centerview Animal Care Center. Always popular. If you've got a question about your pet, whether it be health-related or behavioral-related, give us a call now at 902-405-6000. Ask the Vet when we come back. All right, it's our Ask the Vet segment with Dr. Jeff Goodall, runs Centerview Animal Care Center. Give us a call if you've got a health-related question for your pet or behavior-related question for your pet. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. Jeff Goodall, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate it as always, my friend.
Thanks for having me on, Todd. I hope everything's well out there for everybody, even though it's a bit snowy today.
Indeed. Anything that you'd like to impart wisdom before we get into this?
Wisdom, but I saw a post on Facebook a few days ago that kind of set me off. I think that we all have to be careful about the information that's flying around out there. Basically, it was regarding ticks, and it said there are 6 species of ticks in Canada, and you've got to be worried about them. So let's just touch on that a little bit. Look, there's 40 different types of ticks reported in Canada. There's a whole bunch of life stages. It's too complicated to get into, but they're basically tick diseases generally are a growing concern across Canada. But in Atlantic Canada, I would argue it's getting worse. We used to not even see Lyme disease when I was, in New Glasgow in 2000 and, I can't remember now, 1998, mm-hmm. And now Lyme's everywhere. So basically, long story short, there are 4 species we need to worry about, and I can't tell you how many times in the exam room people will say, well, I don't understand why my dog is positive for some tick disease. I never saw a tick. That's another discussion with your vet, but basically, ticks are out there and they're transmitting disease, and there's also a risk to people. So, the black-legged tick everybody hears about, but there's the American dog tick, the brown dog tick, and the Lone Star tick. And, in addition to Lyme disease, there's other diseases which have fancy names like anaplasmosis, babesiosis. But the new ones that are out there, Powassan virus, which is a human brain swelling meningitis type disease spread by black-legged ticks. There's Rocky Mountain spotted fever with the American and brown dog ticks, and that's a problem in people as well. the Lone Star tick, it's making the news because it actually causes allergic anaphylactic reactions to red meat. It's reported in Atlantic Canada now. So, you're going to need to make, you pet owners, dog and cats that are going outside, need to make decisions on prevention. Really quickly, there's basically two types. I've talked about it on the show before, the orals and the topicals. The orals are the Bravectos, the Credelio Plus, excuse me. The Bravecto product for dogs is every 3 months. The Bravecto product for cat is every 2 months. Credelio is monthly. You can get them combined with or without dewormer. Just please really consider it. Even if you're not seeing ticks, I can't tell you how often in the room. It just happened again twice last week where dogs tested positive for anaplasmosis and Lyme disease. And the owners are like, we never saw a tick. And it's like, it doesn't matter anymore. Nymphs, which are one of the 4 life stages of ticks, can spread the disease. And nymph ticks are super tiny. They're sesame seed size. And my point is, coming back to the family, you've got to think about your family, I believe anyway, because of these diseases that are being transmitted by the tick in the house. So here endeth the lesson on that one. Oh, there's a new one for cats I forgot about, cytoxinosis in my mind. That's the Lone Star tick again, and it seems to be a developing disease in the U.S. It affects the cat blood cells. Guess what? It's going to be coming to Canada soon, to a home near you. So, we've got to think about this stuff, and I don't want to, fearmonger. I don't agree with the post I saw that there's 6 species of ticks in Canada. There really is only 4 reported right now that are dog, cat related. There's more than that. But it's worth an email to your veterinarian to discuss options for prevention. And if you want, there's a website called etick.ca. It's on the Sunnyview link page. And that's a way to report ticks on your pet and actually have them ID'd on the app as well. So there you go. Sorry for the long message there, guys.
No sweat. 902-405-6000. Joe, hello.
Hey, thanks for taking my call, guys.
Sure.
I was explaining to Vanessa, but I just adopted a cat. He's been here probably 4 or 5 days now. Just got him from a buddy of mine, and he'd be gone for like 2 weeks kind of thing. So he just couldn't take care of it. So he's sitting in my lap right now. But from what I understand, he's about a year old, and he hasn't been fixed. And I'm wondering, what would be the right choice of action, I guess, to best take care of it. I mean, I'm not fully agreeable to altering that, but I know that it comes with a few problems, from season to season, I guess. And the other thing would be just getting like an overall physical of him. I mean, I don't think we're into ticks yet, but I'd like to make sure that he's as well protected as possible. And just get his eyes kind of checked out, his ears, that kind of stuff. And
Okay, so trying to figure. Okay, so I'm trying to understand the question. You're asking if you should neuter your cat or not? As a boy, I presume.
Yeah, he's a boy.
Okay, well, the short answer there is you don't have to do anything, but male cats are more likely to spray urine in your home. Whether they go inside or out, they're likely to do it. And cat urine is one of the most repulsive, next to the smell of pig manure, one of the most repulsive smells in the world, and you're going to have a heck of a time getting out of your house. And once they start, they typically keep going. It would appear that
his litter box pretty good. So I think he's using his litter box pretty good. Yep.
Okay, but that's not what I'm talking about, sir. Male cats will start to mark territory in response to things that we can't even appreciate. So what I'm explaining is neutering is important. And then there is some discussion out there that neutering lessens the likelihood, though it doesn't eliminate it, lessens the likelihood of crystal formation so much so that the cat blocks. All cats produce crystals to some extent, males and females, but there is some discussion out there that neutering may lessen the prevalence of blockages due to urinary stones. And then the other thing is there is evidence that they live longer, healthier lives. With respect to your question about an exam, never a bad idea to, get him examined, make sure, like you said, eyes, teeth, all that kind of stuff are normal and good. A discussion about diet. There is a lot of evidence that canned foods are better than dry foods for cats, especially male cats.
Yeah, he tends to like that more anyway, so, yeah.
Perfect. And, a discussion about nutrition and how to manage weight, a discussion about vaccines. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and say that every indoor cat needs vaccination. It's a good idea to have that discussion with your vet and go from there. There you go.
Yeah, I don't know the history on him in terms of vaccination or if he's ever I'll try and figure that out. But is he too old? The guy told me he's a year old. I would guess he's a little bit older than that, within say 2 years. But at what stage is it too late to basically get him neutered?
No, it's never too late. I mean, our clinic policy is 9 months. Some clinics are 6 months. Yeah. So it's not too late. It doesn't, his risk of anesthesia, if that might be where you're going, doesn't really change at all. Okay. But, I just can't overstate the importance of neutering. The longer a tomcat's allowed to act with his testicles intact, he'll fight more likely, be a little bit more belligerent.
Exactly, yeah.
I already mentioned the spraying. Are you letting him outside? Please say no.
Not yet. I mean, I just won't.
Not yet. Okay. Well, then you really have to neuter him. If you're gonna let him outdoors, which I don't recommend, then you have to neuter him. That's it. That's the end of that discussion. He is going to get himself in trouble. He's more likely to get in fights. He's more likely to start spreading disease. If you let him out and he's intact, you're just asking for problems, let alone spreading problems to other cats. There you go.
Yeah. No, well, thank you very much. Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't let him out without me being present. I think I'm going to first start just being on a leash and getting him familiar with the property. And then, there's obviously lots for him to come and worm at. So, and I know they're the ultimate predator, right? It's this cuddly machine that purrs and then just goes and eliminates an entire family of squirrels or something like that, right? Okay, so that's good news. I just didn't know if it was too late to have that done with them, and I'm still a little hesitant on it. But I mean, having the conversation really helps. So thanks, Joe.
Thanks, Joe. Take care. Perfect. All right, 902-405-6000. We'll continue with our Ask the Vet segment when we come back. All right, it's our Ask the Vet segment with Dr. Jeff Goodall. We're in Centerview Animal Care Center, 902-405-6000. That is the way to get in on the action. Jeff, hello.
All right, how you doing?
Doing well.
All good.
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Tell me something, Doc. Can the dog have ice cream? Vanilla, preferably.
Are you asking, sorry, to make sure I heard you right, if they can have ice cream? Is that what you're asking?
Yeah, can a dog have ice cream? Someone said that's the worst thing they could have.
You would say it's the worst thing they could have. I'll put it this way. My dog, unfortunately gone now, she would get ice cream treats once every couple of weeks. My wife and I would take her to McDonald's or, the Cows, and she would get a little bit of ice cream. Anything bad for dogs, and I'm not saying ice cream is safe, but I'm just saying a little bit of it. I'm not going to sit here and say that you can't do it. The big concern would be some dogs and cats are lactose intolerant. So, it can cause diarrhea. There's I would argue natural ice cream versus, the artificial, extra stuff added. But I don't see it as being a huge concern, if that's what you're asking me, in moderation, small amounts, once a week sort of thing. I mean, we love our animals, and it helps us socialize with them to give them some treats. I mean, treats generally, you name them. Potato chips aren't healthy for us. Even popcorn technically isn't healthy for us, but we still do it. A little bit of popcorn to your dog. Well, no potato chips, but, I don't see a problem with it. As long as your dog doesn't have heart disease, because, of course, salt is added to ice cream. As long as your dog's not lactose intolerant or, of course, not diabetic. There you go.
Yeah. We only give maybe a little teaspoon every week or two, something like that. And there was no diarrhea or anything like that, the next day or whatever. So seems to be okay. Yeah, I heard it wasn't good for them, but yeah, that answers my question. So I'll go give her some now. Thanks.
All right. Thanks for the call. All right. Take care. 902-405-6000. Andrew, hello.
Hey there, Todd. Just question for Jeff there. I've got a Belgian Shepherd. You've actually met him before. He's got anxiety. Basically, whenever I go into like a Tim Hortons or a McDonald's, he starts barking, and he doesn't stop until I get out. And everything I look up basically says to reward the dog when he's doing what you want. But obviously, every time I come out, he stops doing the barking. Is there anything the vet can suggest for dealing with this?
Okay, so it's only when you leave him in his vehicle, in your vehicle?
Oh, no, I don't have a vehicle. It's just like outside or anywhere. So if I go into McDonald's on Spring or Tim Hortons on Quinpool, anything like that, basically from the time I get into the door, he'll start barking until the time that I come out.
Okay. Well, I mean, the short answer is, there's probably not a lot of useful information that's practical online. So he has no other anxiety behaviors, was what I was trying to understand. No other anxiety behaviors?
He's amazing. Okay. Like, he's straight out magical.
Belgians are great.
Issue I seem to have.
Right. So I can't answer your question in a simple phone call, that's for sure. But what I would do is I'd start talking to, Bob Ottenbright, Sylvia J., Sublime Canine. I would arrange, and, all we need is a barking dog outside, tied on a leash or whatever, with somebody holding it, and somebody else comes up, because people forget sometimes that, they want to comfort the dog. Oh, he's barking, he's upset, I'm going to comfort him. A stranger comes
it only
up,
makes it worse.
Right. And Belgians are not necessarily the most receptive sometimes. So my worry is actually for the dog to be able to, you need to basically get some training from a trainer to help lessen that severity of, I'll use the word severity, of barking. There's no need or indication for medication, obviously. You can talk to your vet about, God, I'm pulling a blank on it, Nutricom, other things that you can give as a supplement, Composure Pro treats. There's other things that you can use for general anxiety, but your dog isn't having that. So I think in this case, you need some specific behavior modification under the guidance of a behaviorist. So there you go.
Awesome. Thank you, eh?
Okay, thanks, Phil.
McCuddle.
All right, take care, man. 902-405-6000. Jeannie, hello.
Hello.
Hi there. Go ahead.
I'm babysitting my son's 3-year-old retriever, and I've noticed since Monday he hasn't been pooping. He's been trying, and all that comes out sometimes is little juicy squirts. Is there anything I can do?
Well, there's a lot you need to think about here. I mean, if you believe the dog is constipated and has been for 4 days, have you talked to your son about it?
He's out of the country.
Okay, so the answer is no. So I would take the dog.
It hasn't been going on. It just started because I see the dog quite often. And
I understand.
So I've had him since
you need to
Saturday.
take. I understand.
Take him to the vet.
I understand. You need to take him to your vet. That's the simple answer here. Constipation, you can add fiber and all kinds of things, but if the dog really hasn't defecated in 4 days, effectively anyway, and there's liquid coming out, what's happening, more than likely, is there actually is a fecal ball, a hard mass of stool in the colon, and what's happening is the stool that's coming down is hitting that ball, even though the stool itself behind, or if you will, ahead of the ball is formed. Once it hits the ball, it can't get around it. So it's just physics. The stool turns back to liquid, squirts around the ball and then squirts out. So there's likely an obstruction in there. It's not an emergency, but it is something that's going to become emergent if you don't attend to it. So I'd give your vet, literally hang up, call his veterinarian, and get the pup in within the next 24 hours. I mean, I presume he's eating and drinking and no vomiting, right?
Yes. No vomiting, and he's drinking like crazy.
Yeah, so you need to have it looked at so it's with someone who knows the dog, and take it from there.
Yeah, that's what I was planning, but I heard you were on, so I decided to call just to make sure. Okay.
Okay, Jeannie.
Very
Good luck.
Bye.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for Ask the Vet segment. We'll talk to Jeff Goodall. Again, 902-405-6000. Ask the Vet continues when we come back. All right, it's our Ask the Vet segment with Dr. Jeff Goodall, runs Centerview Animal Care Center in Bedford. Give us a buzz, 902-405-6000. And let's talk to Roger. Hello, Roger.
Yes, I'd like to ask the vet if 6 peanuts a day will hurt a 15-pound, 10-year-old puppy.
Why do you want to feed peanuts would be my question, I guess, first.
She likes them.
Okay, well, I mean, 1 peanut a day, roasted and not salted, is probably fine. It's really not something that comes up very commonly. So, as long as you're not feeding peanut butter, which has sugar and a bunch of other things in it, this sounds like a littler dog. So, a peanut a day. I wouldn't want to be overdoing anything, especially not knowing the animal that well. Yep, that's a simple answer there.
I said 6 peanuts a day.
Well, then you listen to your wife. I'm not. Thanks for calling, I guess.
All right.
Okay, thanks for the call. Bye. Take care. 902-405-6000. Brian, hello.
Never go against the wife.
There you go. Brian, hello.
Hi.
Hi there. Go ahead.
Yeah, we have a 4 to 5 year old healthy male cat. He will only eat dry cat food kibbles. He has no interest in wet cat food. So any tips there to help him out there with that? Get some more moisture in his diet?
So what you're asking to transition from dry to canned. It's tough. Once a cat, that's why people who get kittens, just for the general listening population, get those kittens on canned food primarily. Dry food can be used at night to, let your cat leave you alone while you're sleeping. But once a cat gets set on their diet, it's really challenging to, having a moment here. It's really a difficult problem to transition a cat to wet food. Okay, so having said that, you can try different things that are safe. You can add a little bit of Lickum, which is a tube of product, but only a little bit, and mix that into the canned food. Put a little bit on the dry so that the cat likes it. And then you can mix it in with the wet food. The other thing is you can try tuna juice, so not the oil and not the salted stuff, just the tuna and water juice. You can do that. There is kitten milk out there. It's not a really good product that's safe in heavy amounts, but a little bit of kitten milk added to the canned food. You can try different things like that. There's liver powder. Actually, a company, Crazy Dog in Nova Scotia, makes a liver powder that you can sprinkle on wet food to entice the cat. It's that kind of approach. Sometimes, warming the canned food up in the microwave for like a small, call it a tablespoon-sized ball of the canned food, warm it up for 5 seconds in the microwave and fork through it, and make sure there's no hot spots inside the ball of microwave food. Smell is very important to some cats, so microwaving it can be enticing or conducive to making them want to eat it, or you do all of it. You add a little bit of Lickum, you add a little bit of liver powder, you warm the food up. I'm not saying you should starve your cat to make them transition, but, entice the cat. Leave some canned food down before you go to work. so that's all they really have, and leave a little bit of dry down at night. The problem is you've got to be very careful when you cut the amount of calories down in a cat by more than a third. You can actually cause the cat to become ill. If you starve a dog or a horse, they typically do. Sorry, starve isn't the right word. But if you reduce the number of calories in a dog, horse, or person, they can do okay by using muscle protein to make up for the loss. But cows and cats can't. So we can't starve a cat and induce them too heavily, try to induce them heavily into transitioning food. So that's a bit of a long answer, but there's some ideas anyway, and then you got to do your best. And I would talk to your vet at the next annual visit as well, get their ideas.
Right on. Okay, no, we'll definitely go through that list and try those things that you mentioned. Appreciate the help. Thanks.
Okay. Good luck. 902-405-6000. Tracy, hello.
Hi there. How are you guys today?
We're well.
Good, good. Quick question for you. I have a 12-year-old Jack Russell Yorkie mix. Super fussy with his food. He's always been that way. We had him on totally raw for a while, loved it, then refused to eat it. Benefil, same thing. Loved it at first. Refuses to eat it. He's been on Caesars for a long time, and now he won't eat that. So my husband and I are wondering, is it okay to give him beef strips and fresh deboned fish, because he seems to inhale that? But we don't know if that's okay for him or not.
What do you mean by beef strips? You mean like jerky?
No, like steak, like real steak strips, like you'd use for a stir fry.
Okay, so the short answer is I don't know the dog, and you have to be really careful on these phone calls when we're talking nutrition, not knowing the dog's overall health. But that said, the short answer is no. I mean, you need to cook food. I'm not anti-raw, but, fish do carry parasites. So if you're going to do that, you need to consider fish-borne tapeworm and other parasites. Cooking food, especially beef and other than that, and not frying it, I'm talking about boiling it is usually the safer approach, will lessen, especially Yorkshire Terriers. They're prone to pancreatic diseases, and the fats in, not fish, but in the fats in beef and chicken and pork can be very stimulating to the pancreas, and you can make your dog ill without even realizing you've done it until it triggers. So all that being said,
he's had pancreatitis.
Did you say he's had pancreatitis?
He has, yeah. Not for a long time, probably a year or two. So.
Okay, so now you have to be really careful what you're doing, because pancreatitis is triggered so easily now. So in the end, Hillary Watson, she's a veterinarian, nutritional, a board-certified nutritionist. Hillary Watson, her book is called, I can't remember off the top of my head. Look up Hillary Watson on Amazon, get her book, and you can find recipes in there. Now, she sells a balancing powder that you do need to consider for minerals and vitamins, and you can feed homemade diets that are safe for dogs, balanced for dogs, and go that way. Just feeding, like we see it all the time, clients who feed beef or they feed just chicken, and it's usually these littler fussy dogs. And then one day, and it happened 3 weeks ago, one day after years of feeding it, the dog triggers with pancreatitis and they have a few $1,000 bill. And, the dogs get really sick, really painful. It's really difficult to pull them out of it. So without doing it in a balanced diet with some vegetables, some protein, a little bit of carbs, you need guidance. And Hillary Watson's book is perfect. There you go.
Okay, that's great. Thank you.
Thanks so much. 902-405-6000. Tanya, hello.
Hi. I recently adopted an 8-year-old Schnauzer mix who has severe anxiety. She's currently on 100 milligrams of trazodone a day. She weighs 25 pounds. And when we're expecting fireworks, expecting a thunderstorm, I have to give her 2 gabapentin. So, trazodone, I'm wondering if maybe because of her weight, I should take her in and they should get her reevaluated, because I really don't find that it's making a huge difference. I mean, I haven't seen her off the trazodone, so maybe I shouldn't be saying that, but she still licks quite a bit. Certain things scare her, like if someone backfires their car, she'll, run under the table. So I'm just wondering if maybe the trazodone, is it okay, the 100 milligrams for a 25-pound dog?
Well, I'd have to do the math, and I don't have the opportunity to do that right now. But in the end, I presume the veterinarian who originally prescribed it did that for him or her.
Okay.
In the end, I'm trying to understand your question. You're asking if trazodone's effective? I'm sorry, I might have missed your question.
Okay, no, you didn't miss it. I didn't ask it properly. I guess, is this something she'll have to be on for the rest of her life? She's been on it for a few years, I believe, before I got her.
Okay.
The vet records were kind of sketchy.
Okay, well, the short answer is, for the listening audience, trazodone's a serotonin modulator, if my memory's right. And so it's like some other drugs like Prozac and other serotonin modulators. And gabapentin and trazodone can be used together. I used them for my dog when she just didn't like being groomed anymore, and it would just take the edge off and reduce her anxiety. Some clients use them for firework anxiety as you're running into certain anxietal situations. Long-term use, as long as you have a conversation with your vet every year and some blood work, really probably not a big problem. There's very few contraindications. There are some drug interactions, but again, your veterinarian would know to watch for those things. If you're asking, can you get your, what I would do is I'd literally drop an email to your veterinarian and say, hey, what can I do with natural, I'm suddenly having a blank again.
Remedy?
Well, remedy might not be the right word, but Nutricom, Comfort Pro chews. These things have serotonin-like product in them. Theophylline is the one that the one that's in turkey to calm dogs. And my point is, these supplements can be calming care by Purina is a great one. You change the dog's physiology and they become more responsive to the medication. And that's answering your question, can you reduce the dose? You might be able to once you get a dog on the Comfort Pro treats and the Nutricom supplements. They're all similar versions of the same idea. There's some people who talk about Rescue Remedy, Thunder Shirts. There's all kinds of things like, if you anticipate a thunderstorm and your dog's already on trazodone and a supplement, and you're like, yeah, she didn't do too well last time, then throw the Thunder Shirt on too. Anxiety is a layered thing.
Have a Thunder Shirt. She doesn't want anything to do with it.
Well,
got the calming spray. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. Work again towards it, and at worst case scenario, get a behaviorist involved. But either way, it's a layered approach. No one thing, just like with people with anxiety, no one thing works. You have to kind of try different things out and go from there.
I want her to live a comfortable life, so I don't want to take her off it. I mean, if it's okay for her in the long run, and it's not, going to harm her in any way, she deserves to have a comfortable life. So, I'll listen to those other things as well. Okay. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Tanya. Take care. 902-405-6000 Ask Vet continues when we come back. Right, we continue with our Ask the Vet segment. We'll talk to Jeff Goodall, runs Centerview Animal Care Center, 902-405-6000. That is the way to get in on the action. Paul, hello. Hi, Paul. Paul, are you there? Okay, we'll put Paul on hold and we'll come back to him. Let's see here. Where are we going next? Let's talk to Jack. Hello, Jack.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Going well.
Good. Just to mention, to the veterinarian, he's not fear-mongering. That's cool when he opened up the segment. But 3 months ago, my dog was tested positive for Lyme disease. He was given doxycycline, I think. That's the pronunciation. Yeah, and he was on it for I had to keep him on it for probably about 8 to 12 days, and it worked. You mentioned something. It starts with you were talking really fast at the first part.
Yeah, I do.
That's only, now the doxycycline is only for 1 month. But you mentioned something that starts with a P, and that was for 3 months. Could you say that name again?
Okay. So you're talking about the preventatives, I believe now. Brevecto for dogs lasts 3 months, but there's other oral products that last a month. So there you go. That's what you're looking for.
Yeah, the doxycycline is in a pill form, which I can crush up and throw in his food. But what did you say again? Sorry.
Well, if you're talking about the tick preventative products, what I touched on was Bravecto, which is good for 3 months. But there's also monthly pills, and of course there's monthly topical tick preventions as well. And one thing that I kind of glossed over, because I do talk fast, is there are natural products out there that Atlantic spray made in Wolfville. I've had some clients say herbal shampoos or essential oils. I don't know. I personally never found them worked for my dog, so I can't endorse them. But I've even heard of diatomaceous earth being used for ticks, but diatomaceous earth has to be on contact to the tick. So in the end, Bravecto, Credelio, NexGard, those are the orals that are out there. Advantix for topical use is great. I like it more, but there's nothing wrong with the orals. There you go.
Yeah. The other thing is I was talking to, I live in a rural area, I live in Annapolis Valley, and people are telling me that ticks, you can keep a buffer zone. I have an acre of property, and 9 to 10 feet, keep your dog away from that edge of your property. Is that correct, or is that just...
Well, it seems like hearsay. I think years ago it used to make a difference. You just didn't take your dog into long grass or woods or whatever. Now ticks are spread primarily by birds. So if a tick is biting a bird and then decides to parachute off going over the middle of your lawn, she's going to lay on average 8,000 babies, and your lawn's contaminated. I don't care whether it's 9 feet away or whatever. So, it might help to keep the grass short, but I don't know about a buffer zone, my friend. Sorry.
Okay. I had other questions, but I'll let other people get on. But thank you very much.
All right, thanks so much. Let's try Paul again. Hello, Paul. Are you there this time? Okay, Paul's done. 902-405-6000. We gave him a good shot. Jan, hello.
Hi there. Calling today. I have a 12-year-old dog. She's starting to display possible signs of vestibular disease, but I'm uncertain. She's had an abundance amount of skin infections lately that have led to antibiotics, medicated topicals, and shampoos. I'm wondering, is there a possibility that it might be more inner ear related? Unfortunately, she's not really displaying a lot of the signs that I would look for with the inner ear. What she does do is she's not solid on her feet, so to speak, anymore. And this kind of came on very suddenly. She's had a couple knee surgeries when she was quite young, so it's anticipated now is the age to start to see all of the ailments from the surgery and the arthritis and things. However, I'm noticing she's looking one way, but she's walking just a slight bit to the side. Then she kind of redirects herself back. Her coordination, I wouldn't say is completely off, but what I would say is if she gets up quickly, it's expected that she'll have a stumble. And we've put down a lot of runners and carpets and things like that to support her. And actually I have an appointment at 1:30 this afternoon that I just made this morning to get her ears checked out. I'm just wondering, with the vestibular, if that's what it ends up being, if you can talk a little bit about, what the overall longevity and outcome and sort of where that would take us if it's not in her ear.
Okay, so before I forget, it was Composure Pro treats I couldn't think of, and I forgot to mention for the lady with the anxiety, pheromones. Talk to your vet about that. Okay, so I think you're asking about old dog vestibular disease, and then you mentioned something about skin disease and other things. I'm sorry, I don't quite understand what you're asking me to answer for you. Vestibular disease is a disorder of the middle ear, not so much the inner ear. And it's a sudden onset, typical that I've seen it. It does cause balance issues. There's sometimes a head tilt, sometimes an eye movement or jerking called nystagmus, reluctance to stand or walk. There's no real treatment, though I know that some vets will put the dog on prednisone to see if it might make a difference. There's usually no indication for antibiotics, but it wouldn't surprise me if your veterinarian wants to do blood work and x-rays. You can get quite fancy, you can get quite fancy after, the vet has done the initial ear exam and oral exam and the blood tests. You can, talk to the specialty clinics at Maritime and Coastal for a CT. The problem is typically vestibular disease isn't really treatable unless there is an obvious underlying cause. And most dogs, within 3 to 6 weeks, they resolve most of the symptoms. Typically, it gets better within 72 hours or three days in my mind. But I remember 3 weeks to 6 weeks, it's all threes, before it typically comes back. Most elderly dogs get 80% normal. So I think that's what you're asking about. I don't quite understand you bringing up the skin problems, though it sounds like the dog's had a few problems. I mean, I think it's great you've got the runners down. My dog needed booties because I went through the same thing. I put boots on her when she was on hardwood because she refused to walk on the runners. You can also get on Amazon stick pads. You can put on the larger pads, the metacarpal, metatarsal pads on your dog's feet. They stick on there and they do great for traction. But just eliminate the possibility of other obvious diseases and go from there.
Okay, that sounds great. And just to clarify, the reason that I kind of gave you the history on the skin, because it went from like one thing to another as far as the infections were concerned with her. And so I'm anticipating that this could be just, something to do with her inner ear, which is my hope. But if it's not, I was looking for exactly what you answered, sort of what to look for, and what the outcome overall will be. Now, you did say that that it could resolve on its own if it is vestibular. Does it come and go? And if it does that mean she's on like prednisone perhaps during the time that it goes? Or
prednisone isn't really a treatment that's generally accepted anymore, but some vets will do it just to do something. So it usually doesn't come and go. It usually over time goes. And you see about 20% of it still there for life. But the eye movements, the imbalance, those things settle down. I wonder if your dog actually talked to your vet about supplements for joint health and things like that. With all the surgeries it's had in its knees, it's having a hard enough time getting up. And of course, if it's getting geriatric problems, you wonder about, supplements like glucosamine, chondroitin, New Zealand greenlet mussel, fish oils. Go from there.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jan.
Yep. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Jeff, good as always, great as always, my friend. Thanks, and we'll do it again next month.
Look forward to it. Just be kind to your pets and each other out there. Have a great month till I talk to you again.
All right, take care of that. Dr. Jeff Goodall runs Centerview Animal Care Center in Bedford. I'd like to thank Vanessa Van Ness. On the other side of the glass, the control board's doing a fine job as always. Thanks for tuning in and listening, everybody. We appreciate it very much. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.